Hey there, welcome to the podcast. And hey, it's episode 132, I think. And I'm excited about this episode. Angela Rodgers is my guest today, and she runs a ministry called Millstone Ministry, which does human trafficking awareness. They do workshops. She has some books, and then she also works with G.H.O.S.T, which is a part of Genesee County Sheriff's Office, Sheriff's Department, where they basically find human traffickers and rescue people out of human trafficking. So, anyway, this is a great conversation. So, we talk about how she kind of got into this, some tips for people, clergy or lay people who are interested in getting involved, things that you should look for. Of course, education is always a big key. Um, uh, so I think you'll just find a lot of the things we talk about. Also, if you've been around the podcast for a little while, she and I talk about how we met, which is back in episode 119. And so we kind of give a little bit of an update of some things that are happening and kind of where we're at with finding justice in our own backyards. So I think you're really going to enjoy this. I also want to give a shout out to Coe and Cole's media company, who is helping me with my website, and it's pretty much up and running and functional. I think there's still some things we're tweaking, but if you haven't been to the website, check it out. It's in the show notes. Also, if you need somebody to help you with your website or branding, or he does a whole bunch of stuff when it comes to marketing. So his website is also in the show notes. Check that out. See what he's doing and how his company can help you. And let's see. Oh, a couple other things. I have some more guests coming. I was a little bit disappointed. I was trying to get Anna LeBaron on the podcast, and she wrote, she came out of a cult, and she has a memoir about it. And then recently, ABC has done a documentary on it, so you can find that on Hulu. But ABC kind of has temporarily put the squash on interviews. So hopefully down the road, maybe, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 months, she'll be able to come on the podcast. So if you'd pray for that, that would be awesome. But I do have a couple of other guests that are lined up, and I've been doing deconstructing. I kind of think I'm moving into cults, because we talk about cults in this episode a little bit. And then I have some guests coming on the podcast, and we're going to talk about cults. So I don't know. I said that we're just going to let this podcast go wherever it's going to go. So right now, that's what I'm doing. Spiritual abuse and deconstructing and cults and whatever. And so I don't know, just stick around. There's something cool coming for, I think, everybody. I've been trying to tell better stories about women and clergy and the church, but now I'm telling my story and your story because they matter. All right, here we go. Welcome to the podcast, Angela.
Hey, let me go. There you go.
And welcome, Millstone Ministries also.
I'm so glad to see you again.
This has been a long time coming. I had to get to a place where I could have you on the podcast. I had to be in the right frame of mind so I could have you on the podcast.
So. Yeah, my stuff can get kind of heavy. It can get kind of heavy, and I'm not sorry about that either, but
yeah,
we'll get through it, right?
So we'll talk about we'll talk about how we got to know each other a little bit later in the episode. But I kind of want to start with your faith journey, because I know that you did not grow up in the church and didn't really have any kind of Christian faith. I'm not sure if you had other faith background or not. So you just talk about, how did you come to faith in Christ, and like how did that kind of come about in your life?
Yeah, that whole from darkness to light, you know, hindsight, like looking back at it now, it was a tragic journey. It was a tragic journey, but it was beautiful. Um, you know, I grew up in a home where there wasn't any faith. I went to my grandparents on the weekends, you know, we went to church. I had a really bad experience in that church. You know, I described that in the books that, you know, I didn't know what was going on. They'd keep, you know, people would pull me up to the front and then, you know, circle around me and pray over me in what I thought at that time was a foreign language. I didn't know it was tongues at that time. I just thought I did something wrong. And then, you know, I got private counseled by the pastor because I didn't react to that in the way that I guess they were expecting a 7-year-old girl to react. Um, Nothing ever happened inappropriate, but I do know it was grooming. And then, you know, I had another experience at an Awana club that was for youth where, you know, there was bullying. And when we stood up for ourselves, you know, we got kicked out because it was the pastor's kid, um, you know, that was touching my friend inappropriately. And then, you know, fast forward at that point, I was kind of going down a rough road in my life and I was barely making it through school. So my parents, who, mind you, we had zero faith in our home, thought it'd be a great idea to put me in a Catholic high school. I mean, because, you know, that's, yeah, it was crazy. So, you know, someone that didn't have any faith and had two really bad experiences, well, then you get put in a Catholic high school, which was a great high school. Like, you know, I learned a lot. It was a great high school. It's still there today. Um, but taking somebody that didn't understand any of that, that just made me hate religion even more. So I went down a path of 2 decades of Wicca and witchcraft. And, you know, I'm not proud of that at all by any means and things that, you know, I've done. And it took 2 decades to snap me to where I am now in faith. In 2012, my son Jacob was involved in a double murder suicide, and he was just in the wrong place at the wrong time, and he was killed in Livonia. And so that sent me down even a darker path at that point because, you know, who did I believe or who did I blame it on? You know, at that point, I was deep in witchcraft, and, you know, why not blame it on somebody I didn't believe in? It's easier that way. Not that that was right. Um, so then fast forward to 2017, December 25th, actually, 2017. Um, I got the call that my son Jared was dead. And I remember looking up and saying, I'm not doing this again. I'm not doing this again. And I woke my husband up because my ex had called and to let me know because he'd got the call first. And I'd sent him downstairs to get the other kids up and around so we could start moving some things around for the kids. And I had full intentions on committing suicide. I actually went to the closet and I can feel it still in my body. I went to the closet and I put my hand on the closet door, which is where our safe was. And it is the most surreal feeling, even still today, to talk about, Joanne. It's something. And I actually get real choked up saying it, so bear with me. I literally looked up and I said, I'm not doing this again. Because I knew what it did to me before. And God disciplined me right there on the spot. And I'm talking like a billy club to the back of my legs and put me to my knees. And I can still feel the pressure on the back of my legs when I talk about this today. Some people think I'm crazy, and I know what I felt. And I looked up, I said, I cannot do this again. And I started praying out loud. I had never done that before in my life. And I just asked him to surround me and show me how to do this a better way than what I did with Jacob. And I was spoken to. And he said, you're going to take every hurt and make it into something for somebody else that's good. You're going to take every bit of anger and put it into somebody else to make it for somebody else, and over and over and over. And I literally stood up from that, and I felt this heated glow around me. And I walked downstairs and I literally saw the transformation taking place in my house at that point, which was something I remembered very well, because it was just a few years prior, right? And it was like a Lifetime movie playing out, the screens that you get, the reels. And I made a conscious effort. I looked up at the ceiling and I was like, nope, I got this. And I immediately, from that day one, put into place that every hurt that hurt me and every bad thing that I was feeling from losing my two boys, I was going to take that and make it something positive and to help somebody else. And that's my journey on how I came to Christ. It's ugly but beautiful.
Yeah. Wow.
Mine will be barking here soon when the kids get off the bus.
Right. So how long, which I love how you were able to say, I'm going to take all this hurt and this pain, and then I'm going to, what the scripture says, from beauty from ashes, right?
Yep, beauty.
And so how long was it from that episode, like that experience, to when you kind of got into human trafficking awareness? Like how did that journey happen? Was that a long time, or was there like an intermediate step?
It was like a progression. Jared had, as anyone that knew Jared knew, he had some mental health issues. He was bipolar, and he graced us with, every time he went manic, it was front page news. We got graced with that a lot. And when he left, like, he was gang affiliated and things like that. And when he left the gangs, the last year of his life, he was actually turning things around and doing very, very well. But he left the gangs because he started seeing some of the human trafficking that was taking place within it. And that got me interested in that. But, journey through, at that point with foster care and things like that. And that's what got me interested more in the human trafficking aspect. It was more just, I was told to do good deeds for anybody that needed a good deed. And, if you treat everyone you meet like a ministry, that's really easy to do. And that's how we got there. The whole human trafficking awareness and, the interest in human trafficking kind of stemmed from that, because I know that Jared was very much against that part of what was taking place.
Yeah. So what were some of your first steps? Like, did you just decide, hey, I'm going to get training in this, or were you like, DIY? Like,
His sense of humor is funny sometimes. We started getting kids in foster care that had been human trafficked by their own parents. And the preface of that really sunk in. If that's not a sign, so yeah, I started just diving in and taking every certification that I could, learning everything that I could. I took it to our pastor's wife, Jessica, who you met, and just a beautiful, wonderful person. That's, she had a situation happen outside of her home where she thought it was human trafficking, but wasn't aware and didn't think. So she called me, and I was like, okay, let me check into it. So it's like everything just, once I started looking towards that, it was like laying pavement. Like, it just went, and now we have 4 people that are in our ministry. We have Amy, who has a daughter that fell victim to human trafficking, Jessica, our pastor's wife, and one of my very dear friends too, that, is also a pastor's daughter. So she gets to bring a certain amount of naiveness to it. She's learning as she goes, which is beautiful. And then you have me. That's, I don't know how you'd explain it, just very direct, curt, blunt, to the point of what it is. So, we have a board now, so it's good. It's good.
Well, that's cool. So yeah, you're officially a 501c3, right?
We're working on that right now.
Okay. Yeah.
We're finishing that up right now.
Oh, that's awesome. All right. Now I know you work with G.H.O.S.T. Did you do something before that? Before you got, and G.H.O.S.T is an acronym. It's Genesee.
Yeah. Yeah. G.H.O.S.T is Genesee Human Oppositional Strike Team. So, yes, I was a CASA at Voices for Children, and I adored that. I love that, which is a court-appointed special advocate, where we mentor and help foster children and, help with reporting and things like that with caseworkers into court. We're that sound person for them to talk to. And through that, the director there saw that I work really, really well with the hard teens and things like that. And, upon her recommendation and another one from G.H.O.S.T, I was deputized in as the victim advocate.
And so now you're already working with G.H.O.S.T before you started Millstone, or was that kind of hand in hand?
I was with G.H.O.S.T
Okay.
before first, and then, I was doing some trainings and things like that with people, but Jessica and I, we wanted to do more. We wanted to do more. We wanted to get into more churches and do more.
Yeah. And I know you do workshops and stuff, which I'm going to put all of that in the show notes, your website, all that kind of stuff, whatever you have coming up soon. Hopefully people, if they're in the area, they will attend one, but they can also have you guys come out and do workshops, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I went to part of yours. I couldn't stay for the whole thing, but
you came for human trafficking, I believe, right?
Yeah, I think I came for the human trafficking part. So, and then have you recently added the grooming piece, or did you have that for a while?
Nope. We've had the grooming piece in. I did make it more personal after a situation that happened in our family, because people tend to relate more when it's personal and not just statistical. And, we find, because we educate churches, we cater to churches for our ministry, and our program is biblical based as well, as you know. Millstone, Matthew 18:6. You cannot get much more biblical than that about what he says if you hurt one of my children. So the grooming segment, because trafficking takes grooming. People think it's like the movie Taken, where Liam Neeson just comes in and drags, or someone drags a child off underneath, or the white van syndrome. And I'm not saying that does not happen. It does. But more so than that, it's actually somebody they know, love, and trust, that is somebody in their own family or trusted, what we call trusted circle.
Yeah. I think this is important for several reasons. Obviously, the kids, and then, well, I mean, they're human beings, so
yeah,
we should care about them because they're human beings and created in the image and likeness of God. So, but one of the things, especially like those last several episodes, I've been doing stuff on deconstructing, and a lot of my guests who have been on have talked about, the churches are the places that people look for. It's an easy opportunity to get access to kids and stuff like that. And so will you talk a little bit about the grooming and how, just kind of how that works and what people should be aware of? And yeah.
And I don't, and this, don't take assault to this. I don't care how good your church is, and I don't care how safe you think your church is. And I don't care how much ministry safe you've had your people that work in your church take. They're already there. They are there. And grooming is a term that's used to describe how a person builds a relationship with a vulnerable person to manipulate or exploit or abuse them. It's become synonymous with sexual abuse in children. They're parallel. Groomers place themselves in roles that allow them access to these vulnerable people, whether that be church, youth group, anything like that, because, the preface that, oh, they're coming to church, they're Christian, they're safe. That's not fact. That's called a wolf in sheep's clothing. But groomers also take a lot of time to develop relationships. They learn about their victims. They learn about their vulnerabilities, likes and interest. They learn what makes them tick. They become trusted within the family too, which a lot of times is a barrier. They use that knowledge though to gain and control and to get that trust. And then they slowly, and it's slow usually, just little innuendos here and there, slowly start introducing the sexual content and then physical contact and things like that. People think it takes place just online. It's not. It can be in person as well. And it's usually by a family member or somebody else in that circle of trust. And statistically speaking, we live in a day and age where I just pulled the new stats, 1 in 4. Yeah, it's 1 in 4 girls are sexually assaulted before they're at age of 18, and 1 in 5 or 6 boys. You can't tell me that it's not being groomed from young. And we also need to remember that groomers learn that behavior from somebody. And that's what a lot of people don't want to talk about. The first thing I ask when I know that somebody has sexually assaulted somebody is, well, where'd they learn that behavior? And chances are, if you go back, you'll find the reason why.
Yeah, I think it was Brene Brown. I'm not sure. I think it was Brene Brown was saying that some of the newest research that's coming out on substance abuse is saying that it's almost equal between men and women in the abuse. Like, partially it's because men are just taught not to talk about it, but that we're starting to see that it's probably very close to equal numbers. So it's probably more like 1 in 4 girls
Oh,
and
I
1 in
think it's
4
even higher than that,
boys.
because
Yeah,
if you look statistically, 1 in 6 report.
right,
So you can times everything by 6.
right,
So if there's 1 victim, there's probably 6,
right.
because 1 in 6 report, which is why this is really like a silent thing that just it goes through, and the human trafficking aspect of it, it's real. I still get told on the daily it doesn't happen here. And I'm like, do you want to come talk to my 5 children that have been human trafficked by their own parents that we've adopted? You met one of them. You would never know. Yeah, the grooming, it's real, and they're good. They're good and they're manipulative.
Yeah, and the grooming aspect it's a part of the sexual abuse, sexual assault, also part of the human trafficking. We just state like what's the distinguishing between sexual assault and human trafficking?
So
Like legally, how do they
the
determine?
difference.
Yeah.
So sexual assault is not considered human trafficking. Human trafficking is when you do it by force, fraud, or coercion, and it's for a gain. So it can either be for financial gain, a place to stay, for drugs, for housing, the clothing, that type of situation. So if the difference is that, you know, and I can talk about Darian's case. You know, her legal father human trafficked her from, as you know, from birth to age 3. So he sexually assaulted her. But then when he allowed other people to do the same, and then he took a gain out of that, whether it was money, drug money, housing, that's then considered human trafficking by definition of the law, what by force, fraud, or coercion.
Right. Yeah, there's got to be some kind of an exchange. So thinking about this, what are just some obvious things that people can be looking for, whether it's in human trafficking? 'Cause I know I saw the little segment and you talked about some of that stuff, or in the grooming element they can be aware of.
In grooming, you know, grooming's really difficult to, I mean, I've missed it myself. Grooming's very difficult. It's because it's very subtle. They become friendly, they become friends. You know, if you notice that there's conversations or phones that are, you know, like if you walk in and your kid goes with their phone, um, gifts, gifts being given, a child speaking about this person out of the blue that's like the air that they breathe. Um, you know, it's definitely something to look into. The subtleness of it, though, can portray just like it's a concerned friend or family member. So you really have to know your child. And, you know, like if you see them start talking, you know, solely about this person, like it's like the air that they breathe, and that they've become so reliant on this person, or they're checking in with this person, or anything like that, that's definitely cause for concern. A lot of times they don't come to they don't come and tell us. A lot of times they retreat to their bedrooms a lot more. They start getting more anxiety, depression, sleep patterns, and things like that. Or um, when they leave, you can't really account for where they're at or who they're with. You know, I mean, but that also could construe human trafficking as well.
Right. Yeah.
So systematically, it's kind of the polar the same, you know, because it takes grooming to human traffic. Rarely is somebody just snatched and forced into it. That, I mean, I have seen it,
Right.
but it's rare.
Yeah.
It's more or less someone they know.
Yeah, it's definitely the long con, right? Like it's
Yeah,
yeah.
it is.
Mm-hmm.
The grooming segment of it, like, you know, we have devices on phones now. Now, preface uh, that, you know, like we use Bark, so that like if our teens are texting and it flags something's just not quite right, you know, we'll get an alert to our phone so that we can open up the whole chat and be like, hey, something's not quite right here. And, you know, then we can have the conversation.
Yeah. Um, I know that there's a lot of it that's like I know there's a there is a massage parlor right next to my chiropractor's that works really strange hours. I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty sure there some people are being trafficked there.
You
Um,
can, and that could be forced labor as well. I mean, there's other
right.
forms of trafficking than just sex. You know, there's debt bondage, organ trafficking, forced labor. There's, you know, it's not just sex traffic, you know, human sex trafficking.
Yeah. And yeah, I definitely want to make sure I get the numbers and stuff for people who want to report, because that's important for us to have that on hand. And I think that's important for all clergy, especially to have. You need to have a file of where you can report stuff. Yeah.
100%. And in this day and age, everybody has the capability to spot it. And my motto is, if you see something, you say something. It's not your job to investigate it. It's your job to report it, just in case.
Right.
I'd rather have someone get upset with me for reporting it, or wish that I had, you know.
Right. Yeah.
versus worse that I had.
And as a reminder to all of those of you who are listening who are clergy, you are mandatory reporters.
Yes, mandated reporters.
Mandated reporters. That means it's not optional for you to look away, but you must report if you see something.
And keeping human sex trafficking, for adults goes, and minors goes to the Human Trafficking Hotline. But if they're minors, that's under the age of 18, that's also considered child abuse. So then that also has to have a separate call to centralized intake in the state of Michigan for mandated reporters. So there's actually 2 calls that mandated reporters, and a lot of people don't know that. A lot of people think if you call one, you don't have to call the other. They don't always communicate like that, or sometimes it takes quite a bit for it to catch up.
Yeah. So will you talk a little bit about that part? Because I know that there's, man, especially people who if they don't personally know someone who's been victimized,
Mm-hmm.
there's this fear of, oh my gosh, what if I'm false reporting, et cetera, et cetera. So will you talk a little bit about that idea of false reporting and just, I don't know, just speak into that a little bit.
So the way it works is if it's child abuse and neglect and you call centralized intake, which I'm a mandated reporter, and if you're a pastor or clergy or even a youth leader or anything like that, you are as well. It's not our job to investigate those suspicions. In fact, that could cause great harm to somebody that is being human trafficked or sexually abused. Because if you start messing with the trafficker's money, they're going to take it. There's a potential that they could take it out on the victim. And so when you call centralized intake, and it's if you suspect child abuse or neglect, it's not if you know. And again, it's not just children, it's vulnerable adults as well. So if you have a disabled, vulnerable adult, that goes into centralized intake as well. It's not our job to investigate, it's our job to report the suspicion and allow it to be investigated. With the Human Trafficking Hotline, they work a whole nother system. So when you call, and they work in 200 languages now. It's crazy. They work in 200 languages now. When you call them, and we can put the numbers up, you can call them, you can email them, you can text them, and you can even online chat with them. And you don't need to leave your name. You can even be anonymous. And then what they do is then they take it, formulate a report type situation out of it, and then they route that out to the local authorities, law enforcement, or if there's enough, sometimes even the FBI. So when the FBI gets involved, or then they come in and do their investigation with centralized intake, a CPS worker gets assigned, goes in, does the status, the paperwork to see if it's actually factual, not factual, and then they make a determination from there. My suggestion is if you suspect it, you report it. It doesn't matter whether you believe it or not, because you could save somebody. You don't know.
Right. That's I appreciate that, and I appreciate you kind of breaking that down for people. That'll help them. What about, and because I think this is another place where people wonder about, what if it's minor on minor? So let's say you have a 15-year-old and like a 9-year-old. I mean, the 15-year-old is, you suspect is assaulting, a 9-year-old. So technically, they're both minors. Like, and so people, I think, get freaked out. Like, what do you do with that?
So that's a tough one, because a lot of times it's classified kid on kid, and then they put services in place, therapy in place, and things like that. However, there still needs to be some kind of intervention with whatever's going on in that home to protect those 2 children. And again, I said 2 children because one learned it from somewhere. So that means that there's probably a systematically thing going on in that home that needs to be looked into. Centralized intake, all the way, report your suspicion, see something, say something, then let them do it. And another misconception, a lot of people are afraid to call centralized intake, especially when you're in a church setting, And I've heard this, well, I don't want them to know that it was me that called because then it'll cause discord in the church and it'll cause this and this. That's not how that works. In fact, the CPS worker that goes out oftentimes does not even know who called that in. They just get like a face sheet that says what the allegation that was called in on, and they never disclose to who they're going to investigate who called that in. They never do. Now there's sometimes like if you say certain things and they investigate a certain things, it's but usually speaking, that's one of the barriers that I get about people not wanting to call is that they don't want their name involved.
Right. And I think one of the things, and I like how you said that, there's two children. That is one of the things I think we forget about. Like we want to say, oh man, this child's only 15 or whatever, right? But they 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 have been shaped by something that made that now they want to do this to other younger children. So there's probably some form of abuse. It might not be sexual abuse, but it could be some other form of abuse, physical,
And
verbal.
the parents might not even know about it. It could have happened at a friend's house overnight at a
Right.
sleepover. It could have. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. Yeah, the parents may not be aware of it, but that both of them need counseling and treatment and intervention, just to break the cycle later on. So,
It's the same if you look at addiction. Addicts that are, practicing addicts tend to use in or around their children. That then teaches their children that preface until somebody breaks that cycle. And I'm not saying all addicts, but until you break that cycle, that's potentially what could happen. And I don't know about you, all children are born pure. Correct? All children are born pure.
I mean,
And
yeah, I believe that. I think that there are some churches teaching that, you're um, born evil from the time you leave your mother's womb, and which is kind of setting us all up for failure, right? Yeah,
that scares me.
doesn't it?
That scares me. Yeah, like I know that, like if you look at traffickers, I'm not human trafficking victims, the traffickers, 24% of them were either in foster care or within the system at one point in time for their own abuse and neglect. If you look at that statistically speaking, you can't not say things aren't parallel. Like, parents teach their children. And if they go to a friend's house, the parents that you're allowing your children's house to go to are teaching your child while they're running overnight there, or the older brother or the uncle or whatever. You can't be careful enough, because I promise you it happens everywhere, even in places that are supposed to be the safest.
Yeah, definitely. Man. Um, so let's say, uh, you know, as I have clergy and lay people who listen to this, let's say we have clergy or lay people that want to get involved in um, human trafficking awareness, or maybe they want to start some kind of a ministry to help with this within the local church. What are the opportunities? How could they go about doing that? Like, yeah. So I think
So
people feel overwhelmed, like, oh my goodness, it's so big.
it
Where
is
do I start?
overwhelming.
Yeah.
And I get that every time we do a presentation. It people don't want to know that it happens here. And it's happening right in our backyard. The FBI estimates right now that there's a sexual predator in every 1 mile of the United States. That should frighten everybody to even go to your mailbox. You have to be aware. To get aware, you have to be educated. Bring us to your church. Like you've seen it. We put on a great program with awareness and education and the what to do's and how and what to spot. And then we also bring in the social media aspect to it, because 84% of these kids nowadays that are getting human trafficked are groomed online. 84% of them. And, what I tell parents is, Disneyland has 35,000 people that come there every day. Would you take your child and drop them off at Disneyland and leave for the night? Most parents say no. I've had one in all my years of doing this say yes. I was a little concerned. Then don't leave them alone online where there's 500,000 predators at any given time. And, it's like handing your child a weapon without education. Would you hand your child a gun without education? No. Would you hand your child a power tool without explaining to them the dangers? No. But yet we're handing them the biggest weapon of all, the social media, without any education as to what can take place out there. Awareness has to be key. And to get the awareness, you have to get educated. I do like when people go to the Genesee County Sheriff's Department webpage and take their G.O.S.T certification course. Get G.O.S.T certified, because it does real time. Like, it shows you some scenarios, and you get a certificate, you get a great sticker, and a thank you from our sheriff. And the G.O.S.T certification program is really, really good too.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, books maybe you would recommend if people want to start just there. I mean, obviously your books, which will be in the show notes. But any other books that might help them to get started?
No.
Okay.
I struggle with that because everybody's interpretation of how they read things are different.
Okay.
As you and I both know, the Bible.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Everybody's interpretation on scriptures is something different. So the way that I interpret a book that I'm reading about human trafficking awareness and things like that and education could be something totally different to somebody else. We've also had now predators actually come to one of our programs to kind of try to stay up above our game. And it's like, hey, at the end you got a judgment day anyway, so let's just do this.
Now, did you know that they came to your workshop?
Okay. I did. I'm pretty versed with who I knew.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a new one.
Did you? What did you do? Did you do anything or no?
No. We let him stay. He stayed through it, and his was a CSE case, not specific to trafficking, but and who knows? Maybe some of the stories or statistics might lead them in a different route. I mean, we pray during our programs. We pray over people during our programs. We talk a lot of biblical things and things like that. And, at the end of the day, Jesus went back for the one.
Right.
So, yeah, that wouldn't have been nice of me to. I mean, I didn't let him go in the bathroom with my child by himself or anything, but
right.
We were a little cautious, but I mean, we're a hospital for the broken, right?
Oh, yeah, we are. I guess we are.
Isn't that how it works?
Yeah, it does. All right. Anything you just want? Well, we didn't talk about how we got to know each other.
We can talk about that because I love our story.
Okay. So, for those of you who are new to the podcast, you can go back and watch episode 119.
Is that the one?
That's the one.
119.
119. So we got to know each other.
I'm getting a drink of coffee for that part.
Because you have a daughter who was assaulted.
I do.
And I, along with several others, not just me, have brought up several concerns about a family and a church in my area several months before this occurred.
Which was ironic because I didn't even know that at that point.
Yeah.
I didn't know.
Yeah. That church would also tell you that all women are harlots and, daughters of Jezebel. So
Yes,
we're
indeed.
immediately born evil. All women are immediately born evil. Um, and so felt like when I heard, well, one, I'll just say, when I heard your daughter's story, I lost my flippin' mind.
I can only imagine.
Um, and I remember just, I was so mad. I mean, I don't think you can call it praying. God and I were having,
Words.
we were having words, and and I just said, you know, I have a platform for a reason, and I'm going to shine light on this because I am not allowing it to get covered up. And if I go public, then they have, like, it's, I'm forcing their hand. They have to do something,
Oh, and you did.
which they are doing something.
They
So,
are. They are.
um,
Absolutely.
so anyway, yeah, I hadn't even met you yet, but I was so mad. I was like, uh, just mad and, um,
And then you saw the platform I had, and then you were like, oh,
yeah, heartbroken, just heartbroken, devastated. Especially when I found out more of your daughter's story.
mhm.
And so that's kind of how we got to know each other. And very unfortunate circumstances, but I'm glad to get to know you and
That's great
your
though, because I mean,
family more.
it's a beautiful thing because although tragic, and let's go back, she was sexually assaulted twice by him,
Yeah.
twice in the very place she should have been safest. And you know, he preyed on my vulnerabilities as well. I trusted him, and he groomed me to give him the information, and then he used that to gain access to her as a brotherly figure. He sexually assaulted her once to test the waters to see if she'd tell. She thought she handled it herself. And when obviously he didn't, how do I say this appropriately on a podcast? When there was no repercussions from that first one, he knew she didn't tell because everybody knows me and how I would have typically reacted to that given what I do. He came back the second time and did it again. And, you know, they are doing something about it. They are. And I'm very blessed to be part of that resolution so that we can say no more.
Yeah.
We don't have this over our mouths at this point.
Yeah.
And, and I do believe that the right thing, I'm praying that the right thing will continue to be done because the truth has no sides when you're assaulted.
Right.
And you and I both know that. Truth has no sides.
Absolutely.
I just don't think people expected, the amount of people that I could reach. And I'm so glad that I did because we're helping other people too
Yeah.
that were victims as well.
Yeah. I don't think people, I, I think there were several people who were caught off guard and did not think that I would go public like that. Um, which, whatever. They should, at this point, they should have known. Um, I'm not going to put up with that. I mean, I've spoken out on other things in board meetings, so I don't know why they thought
But
maybe I could just
again,
keep quiet about it.
right is right, wrong is wrong.
Yeah.
And the truth has no sides here.
Mm-hmm.
And I will preach that until the day that I die for my daughter. We have all the messages, which somebody didn't bank on us backing up, because we have the right precautions on our children's phones. And, you one time you can say, okay, I really made a mistake, although not appropriate. But when you show a pattern of abuse, abusive power, sexual assault, that's a pattern. That's a predator by definition.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm blessed that I got to meet you. I am. I'm sorry it was under such terrible circumstances. But, I do stand, behind what they are doing now with with the proper investigation. I do stand behind it, and they've been very transparent, and I do feel like my daughter has support.
Good. Good. I'm glad. Yeah,
So
I mean,
hopefully.
if we don't speak out for those who, I mean, we are responsible to speak up for those who can't speak up for themselves, um, which I think is a shame that we forget that. We forget in the church that it is
Well, and
a responsibility for us to speak up for those who can't.
more than the care of the physical needs, though, the church has been given the mission of reconciliation as well. If you think about that, I mean, in 2 Corinthians 5:17, I mean, and it goes on, and then, God says the care of the trafficking victims is the responsibility of the church in Matthew 25:35-40. Like, it's there. It's just in your interpretation.
Right.
And, the Millstone came about when, we were searching and searching and searching. And I'm like, that fits. And I know you've seen it. It takes us 2 or 3 people to carry that thing in whenever we do. Because when we do a program, we set that front and center. We have a big, big millstone. And holy cow, that thing's heavy.
Right.
And, I mean, and it says if anyone causes one of these little ones to stumble that believe in me, stumble, they should have a millstone hung around their neck and plunged into I mean, it's gruesome, but it's meant to deter.
Right. Right. And I'm like, of all the stuff I hear people and how they misinterpret scripture, especially when it comes to patriarchy, I'm like, how do they read the words of Jesus and not take that seriously? If children in our churches are being victimized by people in our churches, we need to take that scripture seriously. I mean, those are the words of Jesus warning us that he sees us.
And sometimes the people that are meant to be protecting us are allowing it to happen. And I hate to say that. Sometimes the very people that are put to protect us are the ones covering it up for their own gain.
Right.
I mean, and that's not just in the pulpit, I mean, that's in everyday life too, I mean, it is. But when you are in the pulpit, you have a responsibility to protect your church and your children, not allow access unsupervised when there's a problem.
Right.
And I know you and I have talked, and we're on the same page with that. And all the education in the world isn't going to fix this without systematic change.
Yes, absolutely. Yep.
Like I can go and educate this all day long on human trafficking awareness, but until there's systematic change with it as well, it's just education. People have to be accountable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it is systemic, and it needs to be addressed at the foundational levels, really,
Absolutely.
of power. And man,
And we're talking every branch, not just in
yeah.
the church. I
Right.
mean, in a church setting, we're talking everywhere. Everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, we have to remember that sins of omission are just as are weighed pretty much the same as sins of commission, right? So um, when we have power and we turn and look the other way, um, and refuse to use our power to help others, we are going to be held accountable for that. So
And integrity is
mm-hmm.
doing the right thing when nobody's watching.
Right.
And when you're in a position of power, you're under an assumed integrity. And that word I use loosely, assumed, because people just assume that people that are in position of power have the said integrity. Well, Nasser, how many victims did he have?
Yeah, right in our own backyard, right?
Right in our
Lansing,
backyard.
Michigan.
Yep. I mean, and you know, it.
And how many times he was brought in to the police, and
Yeah,
they gave him the benefit of the doubt because he was a nice guy.
and the board too.
Mm-hmm.
Swept a lot of it under the rug,
Yeah.
and things like that. And each time something gets swept under the rug, it heightens that a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit, and then that person then believes they're God and can't be touched. Well, insert a little 17-year-old girl that's got a voice now.
Yep.
And a mama.
Yep. And a few other women that believe her story.
Yeah, and and it was really, I have done all this, the human trafficking awareness and the G.H.O.S.T and foster care and all that prior to. And it was really unfortunate that, I dropped my guard for that as well. And, I've had to eat crow on that a few times. And, all the education in the world, and it got past me too.
Yeah.
Got past me too. But we're here and now, and hopefully, that's all I can say. Hopefully.
Hopefully. Well, I'm doing all the things. Praying, fingers and toes crossed, rosary in
Well,
the
and if,
tree, whatever it
yeah.
takes.
And at the end of the day, he already knows the outcome.
Yeah.
And whether systematically something's done at this level or not, there's still a call one day that's going to have to be answered for.
Yeah.
And that millstone is going to suck.
Yep.
That millstone's going to suck.
Yeah. Well, I hope all of these girls feel at least empowered. They feel like they got some of their power back by being able to speak their truth, and that it'll start them on the road to healing.
And I can tell you they are beautiful. They are beautiful and courageous. Beautiful, courageous, and, full of grace. And that's power right there.
Yeah.
That's power. That is power. And I've gotten to meet, people that I never would have. And because you've seen it happen. When I went live on my webpage, it kind of escalated pretty quickly. It escalated pretty quickly. But, I've met, through that, I've met so many people that have just been within our district that has just been so gracious, so accommodating, and so wonderful to my family. And, proper safety plans have been put in place for her. And, our director has been fantastic. Our district soup has been fantastic with our family, as well, and giving her voice and listening intently to her and believing her. So, I pray as well, like you, and cross my fingers and toes that other children aren't getting hurt in the meantime.
Yes, absolutely. And I think
That's
that is what so many people forget, that about this is about stopping the cycle and preventing there from being other victims. Yeah.
and I know from a law enforcement standpoint, it takes a long time to build these type of cases. It does. It takes a long time, from rescue to restoration. I'm there with my victims. And, so I understand. And we want it thorough, we want it right, we want it done properly. But, the victim advocate in me and the mom is, God, I'm praying that there's no other children getting hurt. And at the end of the day, that's all we can do.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say that is one of the parts that I have to. I just I can't let myself think about that because I get sick to my stomach and uh there's been a few times where I've been like, I just think I need to stay in bed today because I start thinking about it and it really gets to me and uh anyway, it's just
Well,
it
and it
yeah.
is. It's sick. I mean, and statistically speaking, an average predator from time they start perpetrating to arrest can commit 117 acts. And if you figure 1 in 6 report, and I know for each arrest that from G.H.O.S.T, it saves like 25 kids. And we've had 187 arrests on people that have showed up to have sex with minors at G.H.O.S.T. And, it's making change. It is. There's been like 140 juveniles recovered on, some of the roundups and things like that. But if you look at statistically 117 acts before they have the shiny cuffs on, you know, that's a crazy number.
Well, yeah, and didn't you say that's average?
That's, and if you figure 1 in 6 report, that's the new statistic, so, yeah, the 10 commandments, man.
Mm, mm.
But, it's a heavy topic, but I love educating on it because it makes so many people aware. It opens their eyes, and although heavy, it's needed.
Right.
Although heavy, it's needed. My goal is to have a safe house in every county of Michigan. You know, that's my goal.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's a big goal.
It is a big goal. There's a lot of counties in Michigan.
There is. There is. I've got a couple, but,
So how many do you have so far?
safe houses, 2.
Yeah, two. Okay.
2.
Is that including yours?
No,
Yourself? No. Okay.
no, not mine. No, we have one in the Thumb and one in by Allen Park.
Oh, great.
So, and those are just, if we get somebody that needs a shower to sleep, to, let us help get documents and things like that to be able to safely, move them or get them services and things like that. We need safe places to call an overnight home. And, a lot of times churches will do that too. We've been very lucky with, churches are like, nope, come on in. We got a shower downstairs. That's a blessing. That's a blessing.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, that's my goal. I'll have it.
All right. Well, maybe after this episode, you'll have some more house people who sign up and say, we'll be a safe house, or
I'll have it.
we've
Yeah.
got a rental home. We'll turn it into a safe house or whatever. So,
And there's no charge to have us come. We
yeah.
do not charge. This is a mission to my ministry. It's not a job. And, we bring cool t-shirts and my books, and that's how we fund what we do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have your cool T-shirt, even though I didn't wear it today. I didn't think
I
about
think
it.
I think you have both of them. I think you have the pray against praying and the I won't remain silent so you
Yeah,
can
I
remain
do have
comfortable.
both. I
I
do
think
have
you do.
both of them.
Yep.
So
Yep. I
uh,
sent them.
they're both cool. And anyway, I'm really excited about this episode, and I can't wait for people to hear it. So let's talk about any last words, like of all the stuff that we've talked about so far. Something you're like, is there something that you're like, man, I wanted to say this.
No, just driving home. If you see something, say something.
Mm,
If you see it, say it.
yeah,
And, if you're in public and you see it and you suspect it, call law enforcement and be like, hey, I just recognize this. This is what I've seen. Can somebody do a well check on this? If you suspect it's human trafficking, call the hotline, call the human trafficking hotline. It's, the if you don't call it, it can't be investigated.
Right.
And I can get you the information and you can post it so that people, when we do our training, we have people take out their phone and then we put it up on the slide and then they take a picture of the slides so
Right. I
that
probably have it in my phone.
you probably do.
I probably do. I'm sure I took a picture.
Yeah. Like if you see something, say something, make that call, because in my 5 children's lives who were human trafficked by their own parents, that is what made the difference, is somebody cared enough to upset somebody and make a call.
Yeah.
And I'd rather have somebody upset with me for saving a child than somebody upset with me for not making that call and then find out that that's what's happening.
Right.
Because the trauma's forever.
Mm-hmm.
Assault trauma's forever.
Yeah, it is. Thank you so much.
I appreciate you.
I appreciate you too.
I do. I appreciate you.
I've been trying to tell better stories about women and clergy and the church, but now I'm telling my story and your story because they matter.